3 True Dunkin Donuts Horror Stories, Story 1. The Regular Part 1. My name is Brianna, and I was 22 years old when this happened. I worked the early morning shift at a Dunkin Donuts in Worcester, Massachusetts. It was a Tuesday morning, 4:45 a.m., and I had just unlocked the front doors to start the day. The streets were empty, the sky still dark, and I was alone in the store for the first 15 minutes until my co-worker arrived. That is when the man walked in. He was our first customer of the day, and something about him made me uneasy. He ordered a medium coffee, paid in exact change, and sat at the table nearest the counter, watching me. Before I continue, hit that subscribe button and leave a comment below, because that man came back every morning for 6 weeks straight. Part 2. I had been working at that Dunkin' for about a year and a half. It was a small location in a strip mall sandwiched between a dry cleaner and a nail salon. During the day we were busy with commuters and office workers grabbing coffee on their way to work. But in the early morning hours before the sun came up, the store felt isolated and exposed. My shift started at 4:30 a.m. I would arrive while it was still dark, unlock the store, and start the coffee machines and ovens. For the first 15 minutes, I was alone. My coworker usually arrived around 4:45, and by 5:30 we would have our first real rush of customers. Those early morning minutes were always quiet. Sometimes a trucker would stop in, or a nurse heading home from the night shift. But most of the time, I had the store to myself, listening to the coffee machines hum and watching the parking lot through the windows. That Tuesday was the first time I saw him. He walked in at exactly 4:48, 3 minutes after I unlocked the doors. He was maybe 50 years old, with grey hair and a face that looked like it had not slept in days. His clothes were clean but wrinkled, like he had been wearing them for too long. He ordered a medium coffee with cream and sugar. He paid with exact change, coins, counted out slowly onto the counter. Then he took his coffee and sat at the table nearest to me, the one right next to the register, and he watched me work. Part 3. I tried to ignore him at first. Some customers liked to sit and drink their coffee. Nothing unusual about that. But he did not drink his coffee. He just held it, both hands wrapped around the cup, and stared at me. When my coworker Marcus arrived at 4:50, I felt a wave of relief. Another person in the store. Another set of eyes. "Who is that guy?" Marcus whispered as he clocked in. "I do not know. First time I've seen him." Marcus glanced at the man who was still staring at me. Creepy. I agreed, but tried to shake it off. We got all kinds at this hour. Night shift workers, insomniacs, people with nowhere else to go. Maybe he was just lonely. He stayed for exactly 1 hour. At 5:48 he stood up, threw his untouched coffee in the trash, and walked out without a word. I watched him cross the parking lot and get into an old sedan. He sat in the car for a few minutes, just sitting there before finally driving away. I told myself it was nothing. The next morning he came back. Part 4. Same time. 4:48. Same order. Medium coffee with cream and sugar. Same seat. Same stare. He came back every morning for the next 2 weeks. Always at the same time, always ordering the same thing, always sitting at the same table and watching me work. He never drank the coffee. He just held it. I started dreading my shifts. Every morning I would unlock the doors and feel my stomach tighten, knowing he would walk in within minutes. I told my manager, a woman named Patricia, about him. Has he said anything threatening? No. He does not really talk at all. Has he touched you or followed you? No, but he stares at me for an hour every morning. It is creepy. Patricia sighed. I understand that is uncomfortable, but I cannot ban someone for sitting and drinking coffee. Unless he does something specific, there's not much I can do. But he was not drinking the coffee. That was what bothered me. He was paying for a drink he never touched, just for an excuse to sit and watch me. On the 15th day, he finally spoke. Part 5. I was restocking the pastry case when I heard his voice behind me. You changed your hair. I spun around. He was standing at the counter, even though he'd already gotten his coffee and sat down. He was closer than he should have been. Excuse me. Your hair. It was in a ponytail yesterday. Today it is down. I like it better down. My blood went cold. He was paying attention to my appearance, noting changes. Please go back to your seat, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. He smiled. It was not a friendly smile. I notice everything about you, Brianna. The way you tie your apron, the way you count change, the way you look at the door every morning at 4:45 waiting for your co-worker. He knew my name. He knew my routine. How do you know my name? He pointed at my chest. I looked down. My name tag. I have been reading it every morning for 2 weeks, among other things. He turned and walked back to his seat, that horrible smile still on his face. I grabbed my phone and called the police. Part 6. The officers arrived about 20 minutes later. By then, the man had left. His hour was up, and he had walked out at exactly 5:48, just like always. I showed the officers the security footage. The man arriving every morning, sitting in the same spot, watching me for exactly 1 hour. He has not made any direct threats, one of the officers said, and sitting in a public business is not a crime. He told me he notices everything about me. That is not threatening. It is concerning, but it is not illegal. I can document this, and if he escalates, call us immediately. They left. I finished my shift in a daze, jumping every time the door opened. That night I found a note on my car. It was tucked under the windshield wiper, a folded piece of paper with my name written on the outside. Inside, in neat handwriting, were the words, I know where you park. I know what time you leave. I know which apartment building you live in. Building C, 2nd floor. The one with the blue curtains. He knew where I lived. Part 7. I did not go home that night. I called my sister and stayed at her apartment, afraid to be alone. The next morning I called in sick. I could not face the idea of seeing him again. But he did not need the Dunkin to find me. My sister's apartment was on the other side of town, in a complex I had never mentioned to anyone at work. But when I looked out the window at 7 a.m., I saw his car. The old sedan was parked across the street, the engine running, and he was sitting in the driver's seat, staring at the building. I called the police again. This time they took it more seriously. They approached his car and asked for identification. When they ran his name, everything changed. His name was Harold Eugene Whitmore, 53 years old. He was a registered sex offender with 2 prior convictions for stalking. He had been released from prison 6 months earlier and was supposed to be under supervision. The conditions of his release prohibited him from making contact with potential victims. The notes, the watching, the showing up at my sister's apartment, all of it was a violation. They arrested him on the spot. Part 8. When they searched Harold Whitmore's car, they found a box in the trunk. Inside the box were photographs of me taken from the parking lot over the course of 2 weeks. Photographs of me unlocking the store, taking out the trash, walking to my car. There were also photographs of other women, employees at other businesses he had frequented, gas station clerks, grocery store cashiers, waitresses, all of them taken without their knowledge. And there were tools, rope, duct tape, a hunting knife, zip ties. The detective who interviewed me said I was lucky. Harold Whitmore had a pattern. He would watch learn routines and then escalate. 2 of his previous victims had been assaulted. 1 had been held for 3 days before escaping. Harold Whitmore is back in prison serving 12 years for stalking, harassment, and parole violation. The prosecutor said he would likely be committed to a psychiatric facility after his sentence for evaluation. I quit my job at Dunkin the day after his arrest. I could not work those early morning shifts any more alone in an empty store, watching the parking lot for someone who might be watching me back. I work at an office now, 9 to 5, surrounded by people. I never work alone. I never open a business by myself. But I still think about those mornings, the way he held that coffee cup, never drinking, just watching. The way he knew my name, my schedule, my address. He had been planning something. The tools in his trunk told me that much. I was lucky. I noticed him before he was ready. Not everyone is so fortunate. Story 2. The Bathroom Part 1. My name is Terrell, and I was 25 years old when this happened. I stopped at a Dunkin Donuts off Interstate 95 in rural Virginia, about halfway through a drive from New York to Florida. It was a Sunday evening around 7:15 p.m., and I needed to use the bathroom and grab some coffee before getting back on the road. The restaurant was moderately busy, families and travelers passing through. Everything seemed normal until I walked into the men's room. There were 2 stalls, and one was occupied. I took the empty one and did my business. But when I came out to wash my hands, I noticed the feet under the other stall door. They were facing the wrong direction, facing the wall between the stalls, facing me. Subscribe now before I tell you what happened next, because what I discovered in that bathroom still haunts me. Part 2. I was making the long drive from New York to Florida for a friend's wedding. It was about 18 hours of driving, and I had decided to split it into 2 days, stopping somewhere in Virginia for the night. By 7 p.m., I was tired and needed a break. When I saw the Dunkin sign glowing off the highway, I decided to stop. The restaurant was at a small exit, one of those places that existed mainly to serve travelers. A gas station, a Dunkin, a Subway, and not much else. The kind of exit you take without really noticing. I parked and went inside. The restaurant was moderately busy, families, with kids truckers at the counter, a few solo travelers like me. I ordered a large coffee and a donut, ate quickly, and then headed for the restroom. The men's room was down a short hallway near the back, past the drink station and the emergency exit. It was a small bathroom, just 2 stalls and a single urinal. One of the stalls was occupied when I walked in. I could see feet under the door, work boots pointing toward the toilet. Normal. I took the other stall, did what I needed to do, and came out to wash my hands. That is when I noticed something wrong. The feet in the occupied stall had moved. they were no longer pointing toward the toilet. They were pointing toward the wall between our stalls, toward where I had just been. Part 3. I stood at the sink, water running over my hands, staring at those feet in the mirror. They were perfectly still, just standing there, toes pointed at the wall, like someone pressed up against the partition. I shut off the water and dried my hands, slowly keeping my eyes on the stall. "Hey," I said, "you okay in there?" No response. "Hello?" Silence. The feet did not move. I felt the hair on my neck stand up. Something was very wrong. I walked toward the bathroom door, wanting to get out to find an employee to tell someone what I had seen. But as my hand touched the door handle, I heard a sound. A soft laugh, coming from the occupied stall. Then a voice. "You saw me. No one ever notices." I yanked open the door and walked quickly back to the dining area. Part 4. I found an employee, a young woman restocking the coffee station, and told her what I had seen. "There is someone in the men's room acting strange. He was watching me through the stall, and he said something about no one ever noticing." Her face went pale. "Stay here. I will get the manager." A minute later, a man in a Dunkin uniform approached me. His name tag said, "Warren. Can you show me what you saw?" We walked back to the bathroom together. Warren pushed open the door. Both stalls were empty. The doors were standing open, the spaces inside vacant. "He was in there," I said. "The second stall. He was watching me." Warren checked the stalls himself, looking behind the doors, checking the space behind the toilets. "There is no one here. Are you sure you saw someone?" "I am positive. I saw his feet. I heard him laugh. He spoke to me." Warren frowned. "Let me check the security cameras. The hallway camera should show if anyone came or went." Part 5. We went to the back office and pulled up the footage. The hallway camera had a clear view of the bathroom door. We watched the recording from the past 20 minutes. I saw myself walk into the bathroom. A minute later, I saw myself come out, looking spooked. But in the time I was inside, no one else entered or exited. "That is impossible," I said. "Someone was in there. I saw him." Warren rewound the footage further. For the past hour, only 3 people had used the men's room. A father with a young son, an elderly man, and me. None of them matched what I had seen. None of them had stayed in the bathroom long enough to be the person watching me. Maybe he was already in there when the camera started recording, I suggested. Warren shook his head. "The camera runs 24/7. If he went in, we would have seen it." I did not have an explanation, but I knew what I had seen, what I had heard. Someone had been watching me from that stall, and somehow he'd vanished without using the door. Part 6. I left the Dunkin feeling unsettled, but convinced I was missing something. Maybe there was a maintenance access I had not noticed. Maybe the footage had a gap. I got in my car, started driving toward the highway. That is when I noticed the piece of paper on my passenger seat. A folded note that had not been there when I went inside. My hands shaking, I unfolded it. Inside was a photograph. A photograph of me standing at the sink in the Dunkin bathroom, washing my hands. Taken from inside the occupied stall, through the gap between the door and the frame. On the back of the photograph were words written in neat handwriting. I was 3 feet away. You never saw me leave. I looked around the parking lot, scanning for anyone watching me. The lot was nearly empty now. A few cars, a family loaded into a minivan. No one seemed to be paying attention to me, but someone had been in my car. While I was inside, someone had put this photograph on my seat. I drove to the nearest police station. Part 7. The police took my statement and the photograph as evidence. They went back to the Dunkin and reviewed all the footage inside and out. What they found was disturbing. The parking lot camera showed a man approaching my car while I was inside. He was wearing dark clothes and a baseball cap pulled low over his face. He moved quickly, efficiently, like he had done this before. He opened my car door. I had forgotten to lock it. A stupid mistake. He placed something on the seat. Then he walked calmly across the parking lot, got into an unmarked van and drove away. The van had no plates. The camera angle did not capture his face clearly, but the police recognized the pattern. Over the past 6 months, there had been 3 other reports of similar incidents at rest stops and restaurants along that stretch of E95. Someone watching travelers in bathrooms taking photographs, leaving notes in their cars. One of the previous victims had been followed for over 200 miles before she realized what was happening and called the police. The officers told me to be careful, to vary my route, to check my car for tracking devices. I spent the next hour in the police station parking lot searching my vehicle, under the wheel wells, behind the bumpers, beneath the seats. I found a small black box attached to the frame near the rear axle, a GPS tracker. Part 8. The police removed the tracker and added it to the evidence. They told me it was a commercial device, the kind anyone could buy online. No way to trace it to a specific individual. The man who had been watching me was never identified. The van was never found. The case remains open. I finished my drive to Florida, but I didn't stop at any more rest areas. I drove straight through, checking my mirrors, constantly watching for vans that might be following me. At my friend's wedding, I could not relax. I kept thinking about the feet in that bathroom stall, the photograph on my seat, the tracker on my car. Someone had been hunting me, following me along the highway, watching me at rest stops, planting devices so they could track my movements. And they had gotten close enough to take a photograph of me washing my hands. I think about what might have happened if I had not noticed those feet facing the wrong direction. If I had just walked out of the bathroom without looking. If I had stopped at a more isolated rest area later that night. The police believe there's a predator working that stretch of highway. Someone who targets solo travelers, watches them, follows them. Most of the time, they do not notice anything wrong. Some of them disappear. I do not take road trips alone anymore. When I travel, I go with friends or family. I never stop at isolated rest areas. I never use single-stall bathrooms. And I always lock my car. Because someone might be watching. Someone might be planting a tracker. Someone might be 3 feet away, and you will never see them leave. Trust your instincts. If something feels wrong, it probably is. Get out. Get somewhere safe. And whatever you do, do not ignore the warning signs. Story 3. The Closing Shift. Part 1. My name is Devon, and I was 20 years old when this happened. I worked the closing shift at a Dunkin Donuts in suburban Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. It was a Wednesday night, 9:45 p.m., and I was preparing to lock up. My coworker had left early because her daughter was sick, and my manager had gone home at 8, leaving me to close alone. Everything was routine until I heard a knock on the glass door. I had already locked it 15 minutes earlier. A woman was standing outside looking frightened. She said her car had broken down and her phone was dead. She needed to come inside to call for help. I should not have opened that door, but I did. Before I continue, hit subscribe and leave a comment below, because what came through that door behind her still haunts my nightmares. Part 2. The Dunkin I worked at was in a strip mall on a busy road that got quiet after dark. We closed at 10 on weeknights, and by 9:30 the parking lot was usually empty, except for employee cars. I had been working there for about 8 months, mostly evening and closing shifts. The job was easy enough. Make coffee, serve donuts, clean up at the end of the night. I had a routine, and most nights I could close up and be out the door by 10:15. That Wednesday I was supposed to close with my co-worker Jasmine, but around 8 she got a call that her daughter was running a fever and my manager said she could leave early. "You okay to close alone?" my manager asked. I had done it before. "Yeah, I will be fine." He left at 8, and I spent the next hour and a half serving the occasional customer and preparing for close. By 9:30, the store was empty, and I started my closing routine. I locked the front door at 9:35. Anyone who wanted coffee after that would have to find another Dunkin. I was mopping the floor near the windows when I heard the knock. Part 3. The woman was maybe 35, with dark hair and a panicked expression. She was wearing a light jacket, not warm enough for the cool October night. She knocked again, more urgently. I walked to the door, but did not unlock it. "We are closed," I called through the glass. "Please," she said. "My car broke down in the parking lot. My phone is dead. I just need to call someone for help. Please." I looked past her at the parking lot. There was a car near the far end, its hood up. It looked legitimate. "I can call someone for you," I said. "What is the number?" "Please, just let me in for a minute. It is cold out here. I just need to warm up while I wait." I hesitated. Protocol said not to let anyone in after closing. But she looked scared, and the night was cold, and she was clearly in trouble. I unlocked the door. That was my mistake. Part 4. She stepped inside, rubbing her arms. "Thank you so much. You are a lifesaver." "No problem. Let me get my phone and we can call someone for you." I turned toward the counter where I'd left my phone. I heard the door open behind me. I spun around. A man was stepping through the entrance. Big, maybe 6'2", wearing a dark hoodie with the hood pulled up. He moved fast, closing the distance between us before I could react. The woman was no longer looking frightened. She was smiling. "Good job," she said to the man. He fell for it. I backed up toward the counter. "What is going on? Who are you?" The man did not answer. He just kept walking toward me, reaching into his hoodie pocket. He pulled out a knife. Part 5. "We do not want any trouble," the woman said. Her voice had changed. The panic was gone, replaced by something cold and businesslike. "Just give us what is in the register and the safe, and we will be on our way." "I do not have access to the safe," I said. "Only managers can open it." The man took another step toward me. The knife extended. "Then give us what is in the register." I moved behind the counter and opened the register with shaking hands. There was maybe $200 inside. I pulled out the bills and held them out. The man snatched them from my hand. "That is it." He looked at the woman. "This is not enough." She walked around the counter toward me. "Where else do you keep money? There has to be more." "There is not. That is everything. The safe gets emptied every morning." She looked at the man. Some kind of silent communication passed between them. "We cannot leave him here," she said. "He has seen our faces." The man nodded slowly. My stomach dropped. Part 6. The man moved toward me, the knife raised. "Please," I said, backing up until I hit the wall. "Please, I will not tell anyone. Just take the money and go." "It is too late for that," the woman said. "You should not have opened the door." The man was close. Now, maybe 5 feet away. I could see his face under the hoodie hard eyes, no hesitation. I looked around desperately for something, anything I could use. The coffee pots were too far. The cash drawer was empty. Then I remembered the fire extinguisher mounted on the wall behind me. I grabbed it, pulled the pin, and aimed it at the man's face. The blast of white foam caught him full in the eyes. He stumbled backward, cursing, dropping the knife to claw at his face. The woman lunged at me. I swung the extinguisher like a club, catching her in the shoulder. She went down hard. I ran for the door. Part 7. I burst out into the parking lot, sprinting for my car. Behind me, I could hear the man shouting, his voice muffled by the foam and the distance. I reached my car and fumbled for my keys. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely get the key in the lock. I got in, started the engine, and floored it out of the parking lot. I drove to the police station, which was about 5 miles away. I ran inside and told them everything. They dispatched officers to the Dunkin immediately. By the time they arrived, the couple was gone. But they had left behind the knife dropped on the floor where I had sprayed the man. They also found something else. In the parking lot near the car with the raised hood, they found a duffel bag. Inside was rope duct tape and a tarp. The police told me the car had been stolen. The couple had set the whole thing up. The broken down vehicle, the distressed woman, the request to come inside. It was a trap. And if I had not grabbed that fire extinguisher, I would have been another victim. Part 8. They caught them 3 weeks later. Their names were Wayne and Loretta Parsons, 41 and 38 years old. They'd been running this scam across 4 states, targeting late-night workers at fast food restaurants and convenience stores. They had robbed at least 7 other businesses using the same method. The distressed woman, the request to come inside the man, waiting just out of sight. But the robberies were not the worst of it. 2 of their victims had never been found. Workers who had opened the door after closing, who had let the woman inside and had never been seen again. The police found evidence in the Parsons vehicle linking them to both disappearances. I never learned the details. I did not want to know. Wayne and Loretta Parsons were charged with robbery, assault, and 2 counts of murder. They are both serving life sentences without the possibility of parole. I quit my job at Dunkin the day after I gave my statement to the police. I could not close that store again. I could not stand at that counter looking at the door, remembering the knock. I work at an office now. Day shifts other people around security at every entrance. I never work alone. I never open doors for strangers after hours. The woman looked so scared when she knocked on that glass, so helpless, so in need of assistance. That is what they count on, our instinct to help, to trust, to believe that someone in distress is telling the truth. But some people weaponize that instinct. They use it to get inside. to get close, to do things that you do not want to imagine. If you work a closing shift, please be careful. Do not open the door after hours. Do not let anyone in, no matter how scared they look, because the person knocking might not be who they seem. And the person standing just out of sight might be holding a knife.